Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regular Town Council meeting for Tuesday, August 17th, 2021. Please rise for a moment of silence. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Fishbein.
Here.
Laughlin.
Here.
Marone.
Here.
Morgenstein.
Here.
Shortell. Tata.
Here.
Testa.
Here.
Zandri. And Chairman Cervoni.
Here. Can we get a motion on the consent agenda, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve or accept consent agenda items A through L.
Second.
Moved, seconded by Councilor Tata. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda passes. Item 3M should be resubmitted by the Board of Education. I will follow up on that. On to the public question and answer period. Oh, I'm sorry. Item 4, there are no items removed from the consent agenda. On to the public question and answer period.
Riley O'Connell, 30 Northford Road. I would like to address the mayor directly, if possible, about the ballot drop-off boxes outside this building.
You can.
Sorry?
You can.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So about 2 weeks ago, I notified the town clerk's office that my campaign would be distributing absentee ballot applications to any Wallingford voters that wanted them. And at the time I was told, great, no problem, and that from that moment on, they would be frequently, I was told once or twice a week, checking those ballot drop-off boxes to ensure that those applications were being received, that they were being processed in a reasonable amount of time, etc. So you can imagine, my surprise when this past week I learned from a few voters that reached out to me, or I should say attempted voters in this instance, that when they tried to actually drop off their absentee ballot applications, that those drop boxes were still locked. And it has since been reported that that was a decision that, Mr. Mayor, you made, and that your administration has now said that you will keep those boxes closed off or locked until September 1st. So, just to explain quickly why I find this action, and this is putting it lightly, but extremely disappointing, and why a lot of voters feel the same way, is because, and let's be absolutely clear about this, this is actively denying people access to those ballot boxes. And more specifically, this is seriously impacting and even preventing members of my generation from being able to submit those applications. Because as we all know, that college students, or I should say college-age Wallingford voters, will be going back to campus. Most of them will be returning to campus before September comes along. And so, as I see it, and I think we should also clarify as well, I don't think anyone in this room will really argue with this statement too much, but this is a demographic that overwhelmingly does not support the mayor.
You know, at this point, you're campaigning, and that's not really what this time is for. So if you want to address an administrative issue, I think that's appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, this is not campaigning.
Yes, it
is. This is giving people the access to voting. This is giving my generation, whether or not people are voting for me, this is really that simple. And this is, sorry for my frankness, but this is a blatant attempt.
You can focus on the administrative issue.
Fine. I mean, I don't see how I'm not focusing on it currently, but I will
Well,
continue.
when you're
in
focusing
that
who
direction.
people are voting for, that's not the administrative issue.
Fair enough. I will move along then. But like I said, this is a problem. And to be more clear, the state didn't release these applications, these absentee ballot applications, weeks ago so that people could just stare blankly at them for an entire month. They were released so that people could fill them out and submit them now so that people could use them and so that we could use our ballot boxes in the way that they were designed so that people could drop them off. And like I said, I haven't said this yet, but it doesn't cost the town anything to have these ballot boxes open and unlocked. And having them locked truly only serves to discourage voting and voter turnout. And so all I wanted to say is, look, the mayor and I have reasonably disagreed on plenty of things in the past, and that is fine, but in my opinion, there's nothing reasonable about this action. I know the excuses we're going to hear, so I'll go through this quickly because we heard these same excuses or similar ones with a similar situation with the ballot boxes last year. But they're going to be that why don't you just go into town hall and submit your applications directly to the town clerk, or better yet, just mail them in. And those arguments, and I think the term argument there is being used loosely, but those arguments completely miss the point. And that point being that the reason those ballot boxes exist in the first place is because they're the safest, most convenient, and most accessible way for people to vote. Again, I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find that many college-age voters who keep postage stamps in their dorm rooms. In addition to, think about how many people in this town, how many voters in this town already work 40-plus hour weeks, and it's not necessarily easy or even possible for some of them to come to town hall in the limited hours that it's open. So again, and this is relevant, well, fine, I'll skip the campaign part, but.
Thank you.
But it is relevant because I feel like a necessity for us to use campaign funds to literally pay to send all young voters, absentee ballot applications included with that, and this will cost thousands of dollars, included with that, return prepaid and pre-stamped return envelopes so that I can help them circumvent these needless obstacles that are being put in their way to vote.
You've also used 6 out of your 3 minutes.
I promise I'm almost done, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your patience. But again, this shouldn't be a pay-to-play system in the first place. The last thing I'll say is, we've heard this quote before, if you really want change, then stop complaining and go vote. All right? But what's happening here is making it, the very moment that my generation has finally established itself or has begun to establish itself as a formidable voting bloc, it's the same moment that people in power are trying to prevent our ability to reach the ballots, our ability for our votes to be counted, and ultimately for our voices to be heard. So I know this is a long arrival to get here, but my only question is, Mayor, what is your explanation for choosing to keep these ballot boxes locked despite the absentee applications being out and ultimately restricting people's access to voting? Thank you.
I believe the state of Connecticut indicates the ballot boxes should be open October 4th. We have indicated September 1st. Ballots won't be available to anyone until sometime in the end of September. So these are applications for ballots, but obviously the clerk's office will not be able to supply any ballots, and none will be mailed to anyone until September. So, it's not clear to me where this aggravates or discourages or in any way inhibits someone from voting, but I think it's a reality. The ballots themselves are not available until the end of September, and the state is saying October 1st, so we're well ahead of that. Finally, the clerk's office has to tend these boxes, one of which is at the senior center, which means staff is driving to the senior center or going out twice a day to be dealing with these boxes. And this time of year, they don't necessarily have a full staff, and we need to spend our time as meaningfully as possible. So I think September 1st is a reasonable time period, and at that point, the boxes have been locked since last November, and they would be open then.
I just want to clarify, I'm talking about absentee ballot applications, not the absentee ballots themselves, but thank you.
If our remote participants can be mindful of the noise their mics are picking up, that would be helpful. Thank you. Anyone else for public question and answer? Ma'am. Name and address for the record, please.
Donna Glidden, 29 Pomeroy Ave, Wallingford.
You're
obviously.
fine. It's the
Sorry.
remote participant that's making noise.
I just had a question about whether or not I should hold my comments until one of the items on your agenda come up. It's about Doolittle Park.
If that's what you're commenting on, that would be appropriate.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Mariah Melendez. I live at 990 Yale Avenue. I've been here before, so hello, if you've seen me before. I am one of the people who is supporting, or hopefully will be supporting, the resolution to get air conditioning for the shelter. And my question is for the mayor. Hi. I want to know, or hopefully if you could tell me, if you can't, obviously I understand that, if the resolution is passed tonight, obviously I don't know if it will be, but if it is, will you be able to act on putting air conditioning in that shelter, at least today or sometime? Will something be made towards that goal?
Well, it makes money available, and that's always great. Currently, the animal control officer is evaluating what can and should be done, and we have meetings scheduled, and following those meetings and his advice and direction, we will make a decision.
Okay, thank you.
So there is an animal shelter resolution on the agenda. There's also, as Ms. Glidden pointed out, there's an item regarding Doolittle Park on the agenda. Any public comment regarding what is not one of those items? Because there will be public comment during the discussion of those items. Yes, there will.
I'm Allie Havrilla, and I live on 197 Cheshire Road, and I need to ask you, beg you, please open those boxes. Like Riley had said, they basically are applications to get the ballot, okay? They're not the ballots, they're the applications. So just in case you didn't understand.
Anyone else for public question and answer? All right, there being none, I close the public question and answer period, and at this point, I'm going to move ahead to item 8, which is discussion and possible action regarding the tentative agreement with UPSEU Local 42417 Management to be effective January 1, 2021 for 3 years. Gentlemen, if you could please identify yourselves for the record.
Yes, good evening, councilors. Jim Hutt, Town HR Director.
Good evening, Dennis Ciccarello, Town Labor Attorney.
And if you could let us know what's going on with this new proposed agreement. I understand that we do have an agreement with the union at this point.
Yes, we're here tonight to seek your approval for a 3-year contract to run from January 1, 2021 to December 31st, 2023 with UPSU Local 42417, which represents supervisors and managers on the town government. The provisions that were agreed to by the parties is to amend the union security language. It adds language to permit additional plans under the 457 plan, increases health insurance premium cost share from 15 to 17% of the premium, and 3 years wages, January 1, 2021, 1.95%, January 1, 2022, 1.95%, and January 1, 2023, 1.95%. And I'll answer any questions if the council has any.
Certainly. First up, Councilor Fishbein, and then I will check to see if the remote participants would like to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
We got sent a red line version of this document, and I appreciate that. And I just want to make sure the red line version is the final version.
It's the draft that, being provided to you so you could see what's being deleted and what the new language is.
Okay. And I can be assured that what I'm looking at in this draft is what the town and the leadership of the bargaining unit have agreed upon.
So there's just one correction that was made, that was brought to my notice before the meeting, is that on page 5, under section 3, at the end, hold the town harmless for claims. That should be included in the language.
All right, so
So this will go, so this is,
well, I understand procedurally, but I want to focus on that particular section because I'm trying to figure out, I mean, we're being asked to approve a document. Am I being asked to approve a document that is before us or a document that you want to orally amend? Because this language as presented to us does not make legal sense.
no, I'm not asking you to approve
Okay.
this document. I'm asking you to approve what was agreed to by the parties. So
So when am I going to see what was agreed to by the parties?
I have a tentative agreement. I didn't bring copies for you, but I did provide a summary.
I got the summary. I see the summary, but
I can show you this document here. This is a copy of the tentative agreement, if you want to take a look at it.
okay, so particularly section 3 on page 5.
Yes.
How, because I think you've already indicated that what was sent to us is not the language that the parties have agreed to, right?
As I recall, if I can help, I think the word "and," that should say "claim" instead of "and."
Okay, if that's the answer, that's fine. We were sent a packet with a document that I reviewed, and I'm just, am I correct to understand the document that we were sent to review in anticipation of this meeting is not the agreement that there was some change to it? That's all. It's a basic, and given that representation, I think the answer is yes. So, I mean, is that on page 5, in section 3, the word "and" should be stricken
Correct.
and replaced by the word "claim"?
Yes.
Okay, that's a simple answer to a simple question. So I just want to read that because the first time I'm learning of that is about a minute ago. So I just want to read that change because I got this last week. So if you just a moment. Okay, that makes sense. I thank you for that. The other portion is the 457 plan, which, what page is that on? Do you recall?
23?
And I think the portion, so we've added in section 4, we recognize there's the nationwide plan, right? And then it opens it up to, or other plans implemented by the town. And I'm just it seems very general. And my understanding is that the members of the bargaining unit have agreed to this, at least tentatively. Why is this language necessary? Is the nationwide plan going away? Why is that necessary?
No, I solicit proposals from, department heads, and one of the proposals that came to me to present to the union was what if we ever wanted to offer more than just nationwide? This provides us an opportunity to do that. It's not meant to take away the nationwide plan, but there are several other options that, could be implemented by the town if in fact it decides to do that. So this just opens it to more than just nationwide as the 457 plan provider.
No, and I understand what the language, it was a bit unusual to me because understanding that we've got employees that are represented through this contract, there's no provision that says acceptable to the employees or, that the union signs off on. It gives unilateral power to the town, which doesn't seem arm's length here. It just says, or other plans implemented by the town. So if the town next week says we're getting rid of Nationwide, we're going with Fidelity, there's no choice. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, the town is responsible for this plan. We're the ones who are liable. This is a very troublesome issue. I don't think you want me to spend a long time on the legalities of it. But the 457 plans are the creatures of the employer. So we have to be satisfied that the service being provided is being provided properly and meets all of the fiduciary standards that ultimately we will be held to. If they fail, we fail. So we have to be very careful about what companies are chosen. We want to make sure that they have the expertise to perform properly. We have utilized an expert, and Jim, what was the name of the company? Sorry to catch unawares, but we recognizing that we are not trained fiduciaries, we are not trained investment managers. We hired a firm to advise us on the investment portfolios being offered, and they have provided information as to what was proper, improper, and we hope to enter into a contractual agreement with them that it would be an ongoing service so that they are evaluating on an annual, if not more frequent basis, what is advisable. We need that because we do not employ anyone at this point with the expertise to properly advise the town with regard to investment portfolios. So we don't want to hand that over to anyone else because ultimately the town of Wallingford and the people who pay the taxes that give us the money to pay for these services, we need to protect their interests too. And it's a fiduciary issue. We take it seriously. So that is the story behind the language and the action we're taking.
If I could just ask the remote participants to mute your microphones while you're not speaking. We're getting a lot of feedback from you. Thank you. Councilor Fishpine.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know how we got there, but fiduciary responsibility, it says right here, the town shall not be liable for any contribution to the plan. So I'm just,
Let me explain that. The town does not make a contribution to the plan. These are deferred incomes provided by participants. So we are not liable if they fail to make contributions into the plan. No, but that doesn't describe the fiduciary duty that the town has to see that these investments are warranted, that they meet high standards, that people won't suffer losses for reasons that we should have known beforehand and didn't advise them properly. So the fiduciary is not liable if a person doesn't invest in a plan, but certainly a fiduciary is liable for anything that occurs with money that has been invested.
understood. And the point was, there's two sides to this. The employee, it's not automatic. 457 plan is a 401k for government employees. So one has the option of investing in the 457 or not.
They have the option, but under a 401k, the individual is responsible for whatever decisions are made, good, bad, or indifferent. If things fail, it was their decision. But a 457 is a different arrangement. A 457 places that liability for failure to inform, for poor investments, whatever. They place that liability, the 457 places it in the employer, which is the town of Wallingford. It's not like a 401 in that regard. Should be. I don't know why they set it up the way they did, but they set it up in a way that ultimately the town and the taxpayers are liable. So we need to be very careful about what we accept as exposure and liability, which is why we seek advice from experts and why we have to be very careful about what entity takes over investment. If it's an entity that does not properly invest and provides a portfolio that is not up to industry standards, we do not want that liability.
I understand. And Mr. Chairman, I didn't want to go down this far down the rabbit hole, but I just did learn something, I think, and I just want to clarify the difference between, because I have a 457, and am I to understand that if I choose to invest in a particular holding in that 457 and that holding tanks, that there's liability by the government? Is that what I'm to understand?
Well, and I'm no expert, but I believe in Orange County, California is an example of 457s that developed problems, a lot of lawsuits. The result was the federal government created a trust situation. So it's all held in trust, so creditors aren't able to reach the money, which, by the way, is held by the town of Wallingford. So creditors can't reach that, but we choose the entity that provides the investment, which means we are choosing the fiduciary. That creates a liability for us. So if we are not properly monitoring the company that's handling those investments, and they offer below-grade investments and things go wrong, can the town be sued? My belief is absolutely yes, and it's happened in the past with Orange County under different rules.
Okay, interesting. Just focusing back on the language that was asked for in the contract, do we contemplate, or are we just looking for flexibility, that there be more than one 457 plan? Because as drafted, it says, or other plans. It doesn't say, or other replacement plan, right?
Correct.
Is it for flexibility, or is that something we contemplate, is having like 3 different 457 plans, pick the one that...
I would let me intercede. No, we're not planning on more than one. The difficulties we have with one are significant and costly. So the more we have, the more time we will be spending in analyzing what's appropriate, what isn't, and making those judgments that ultimately affect other people. So certainly I would be very concerned about expanding that liability.
I thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's all I had. I just asked that when there's some sort of a correction, before the meeting, that, we know, at least I know about it before I get here. So I
just found out about it moments before the meeting. So if there was, time to notify you, then we would have done that.
Okay, thank you. We've been doing this a while,
Yeah,
and
sure,
I know.
sure.
So,
Yep.
yeah, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, please remind me, we take no action tonight. This goes into effect, is it 45 days from it being presented?
Yes,
So,
44 or 45.
okay, so that's, my point is that puts us somewhere in mid-September.
I counted it out to the 12th, I think.
Okay, which is after our first meeting in September. So we don't have to take action on this tonight. If we don't take action on this tonight, it'll go into effect sometime about September 12th, plus or minus. But when does the date start what date is it calculated from?
July 30th.
July 30th is the TA,
Oh, okay.
so plus 44 days. That's the time within which the council needs to act. Otherwise, it act one way or the other, ratify or reject.
Sure.
Otherwise, it
Thank you for your patience. So that's the date from which it's calculated. That's how we get to September 12th. So if there's further concern about this contract, it can come back before the council in our September meeting. But absent that, it'll take effect September 12th without our taking any action on it.
yes.
Before we move along, I don't see any hands up here. Councilor Morgenstein, do you have any questions?
I really could not hear a lot, but from what I know, I don't have any currently.
Thank you. Councilor Testa, any questions?
No, thank you.
All right, any questions or comments from the public? There being none, there's no motion on the table, no action necessary. Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On to item 6, which is the COVID update from the Health Department. I want to thank our member of the Health Department for her patience, and if she could come forward and just introduce yourself for the record, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vanessa Bautista. I am the Chief Sanitarian for the town of Wallingford, and I will be covering for Stephen Civitelli, Health Director.
You might have to speak up a little bit, maybe bring the mic a little closer. I understand Councilor Morgenstein is having trouble hearing from where she's listening.
Is this okay?
Much better.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. I will be sharing some COVID-19 updates. So from July 15th to August 7th, there has been a total of 90 COVID-19 cases in the town of Wallingford. As of today, there is 321 people in the hospital, and the positivity rate statewide is 4.25% as of today. There has been no fatalities in Connecticut surveillance system recorded from Wallingford since May 1st. And I brought this board with me so all of you can get a visual of how the cases are going down and the hospitalization rates as well, and how the vaccination rates are increasing. So this chart right here basically shows how all our surrounding towns are approaching that 80% vaccination rate. Right now, according to the CDC, our vaccination rate is 70.81%. But if we deduct the population who is not eligible, we have a total of 80% vaccination rate. And about 66% of the population of Connecticut have received the first dose of the vaccine. We have had a few walk-in clinics at the MRC building on August 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We offered Moderna and J&J in all 3 clinics. We will continue to offer vaccination to homebound individuals. There we have an upcoming clinic at the Wallingford Public Library on August 25th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Here they will be offering Pfizer for those people who are 12 years and older, and J&J for those who are 18 and older. This morning, we received information for vaccine boosters from the Department of Public Health. The FDA has amended the emergency use of authorizations for both Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices is recommending a third dose of Moderna or Pfizer vaccine for immunocompromised individuals under the FDA emergency use. The FDA has not authorized an additional vaccine for the vaccine J&J at this point because there is a lack of data. The Connecticut Hospital Association is currently working with the Department of Public Health and state providers and the outreach to potential vaccine individuals. People with diabetes and heart disease are not advised to get a booster at this time. According to CDC, you would be considered immunocompromised if you have been receiving active cancer treatment for tumors or cancers of the blood, received an organ transplant and are taking medicine to suppress the immune system, received a stem cell transplant within the last 2 years, or are taking medicine to suppress the immune system, have severe primary immunodeficiency, have an advanced or untreated HIV infection, or are currently undergoing an active treatment with high doses of drugs that may suppress your immune response. Residents who already know that they meet these clinical guidelines can contact a vaccine provider and make an appointment for the third dose. If you are unsure, you can contact your healthcare provider to confirm their eligibility. Individuals who do not meet the criteria for immunocompromised do not need a third dose at this time. For the travel advisory, as all of you know, mandates and requirements regarding travel are no longer in effect in Connecticut as of March 19, 2021. However, residents and visitors to Connecticut are strongly urged to follow travel-related guidance from the CDC and the Department of Public Health. Travelers should review CDC's travel guidance when planning travel outside of their local community. Do not travel if you are sick or are considered infectious after testing positive for COVID-19 or have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. Lastly, we will continue to comply with the executive order and the Department of Public Health by following Executive Order number 13A exactly as is. In other words, individuals who are not fully vaccinated for COVID-19 shall cover their mouth and nose with a mask. A person is considered fully vaccinated 14 days after receiving the final recommended dose of a vaccine. Department of Public Health's latest guidance on masking is the following. Masks are not required outdoors at this time. Fully vaccinated people are not required to wear masks. Unvaccinated people must wear masks. Masks must be worn by everyone, regardless of vaccination status, in healthcare facilities such as hospitals, nursing homes, public transit, schools, correctional facilities, and daycares. Businesses will have the option to adopt a universal mask policy. These policies that I've just mentioned were created by following Governor Lamante's Executive Order 13A and the Department of Public Health order issued under Executive Order number 13A. In an effort to combine ease and accuracy, the Hartford Healthcare is running a COVID-19 hotline to answer questions about the virus, vaccine, testing, quarantine, or anything related to the pandemic. Clinicians will be available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is all I have for COVID-19 updates. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You made reference to the J&J, and I think we all know that's the Johnson & Johnson vaccine,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
Okay. Councilor Morgenstein, you requested this item?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so unfortunately, the quality of dial-in is not up to par. So the reason I wanted to bring the health department back is, as we do know, numbers are going up and community spread is occurring more. We have not yet had Governor Lamont initiate indoor masking again, but honestly, you can't tell who's vaccinated and who isn't. And so there are places where people have concern. Do they have coworkers that may not actually be vaccinated who are coming to work not wearing a mask, and other public places having similar.
Is that all you had for us?
So do we have any statistics that break out the 12 and up age group for vaccines?
What was that? I didn't hear.
Do we have statistics on how well vaccinated our 12 and up teenagers are? Have we separated them any from the general adults?
Correct. It's 80%. As of August 12th.
80% of 12-year-olds to
12 and older, 80%.
But right, but do we have we separated, 12 to 8?
You're asking 12 to what age?
All the way up
18.
to adulthood.
Okay, so right now, I don't have that separated, categorized like that. I just have 12 and older, which is 80% of that population. And that covers that entire group.
So I have heard so I've heard concern from nurses who are feeling that and I don't know if we're talking 12 to 18, 12 to 19, but that adolescents are perhaps not as fully vaccinated as we would like. So I think there was a request to see whether any endeavors could be made to try to reach out to that population who's going to be heading back to school.
Okay, I will have to get back to you on that. I will check that up and I will get back to you.
Yeah, that would be great, because again, I have a Yale nurse that is messaging me that number is nowhere near the 80%. So that would be very useful. And again, just encouraging people.
Okay, I'll categorize the data by age. And I'll have that ready in a couple of days.
And, yeah. Okay, we're talking over each other. This audio is not good. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna, I don't know if people heard me say, there are people requesting people to be more vigilant with that, although it's not necessarily mandated. All right, I think I'm done because again, sound is not working. Thank you.
I don't see any hands on the dais. Councilor Testa, do you have anything? Anyone from the public?
I'm sorry, no thank you.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
Roger Deering of Sharon Drive. Ms. Batista, thank you for the update. Just two quick questions for you. First, you had mentioned that there's a 4.2% positivity rate. Do you happen to have statistics offhand as to what the positivity rate is specifically among vaccinated individuals and among unvaccinated, or is that data not available?
No, right now the data is just giving the general positivity rate by state, just generalizing everything.
Okay, and just one other question. You had mentioned that 20% of those who are eligible are not vaccinated. Do you happen to know offhand how many of them want to be vaccinated? If there are potentially any access barriers for those who are not?
Well, the part of the population that I excluded was those who were ages 11 and under.
Okay.
So not necessarily if you had a medical condition, just by age.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Anyone else from the public? There appearing to be none. Ms. Bautista, thank you very much for filling in for Mr. Civitelli.
Thank you. Have a good night, all.
Thank you. on to item 7, which is Part A, a report from the police department regarding ongoing criminal behavior and civil disturbances occurring primarily at Doolittle Park, along with periodic disruptions to pedestrian and vehicle traffic along public rights of way. And then Part B is discussion and possible action on potential remedial actions, including but not limited to the installation of surveillance equipment, as well as individual sanctions for repeat offenders. Good evening. If you would kindly introduce yourselves for the record.
Good evening, Council. John Ventura, Police Chief.
Sergeant Lou Brangi.
All right. Have you got anything prepared in response for us?
I have. So I spoke with Councilor Testa regarding some incident at Doolittle Park. So I thought it would be fair for the council to have a full transparent view of our efforts at Doolittle Park, what exactly is occurring, and some of the shortcomings that us as an agency are experiencing. So the figures that I'm going to provide to you right now is broken down from January 1st of this year till current day. Suspicious activity complaints, which basically is anything that comes in a dispatch that doesn't have a specific code. There's 16 total incidents reported under a suspicious activity complaint. Of those 16 incidents, 2 of those resulted in a formal documented case narrative. As I go over the case narratives, it's important to realize that these are juvenile cases, so there's only some specific information I can disclose based on the age of the people involved. So I'm going to do my very best to try to give an overview of what these cases are. So as far as suspicious activity complaints go, August 11th, 2021, an individual reported that a white substance was left on their car during a softball game that occurred at the park. There was no damage to the car, and there were no suspects that were identified. May 27th of 2021, there was 4 juveniles suspected of using drugs. Patrol Division responded, and the investigation revealed that they were not using drugs and nothing criminal had occurred. There are 29 total incidents of juvenile complaints that were logged by the Wallingford Dispatch and responded to by the Community Impact Unit and the Patrol Division. Of those 29 incidents, 7 resulted in a formal documented case narrative. August 12, 2021, there was a threatening incident between a group of juveniles. The individuals were referred to the Youth and Social Services for diversion. On July 27, 2021, with an altercation between an adult individual and a group of juveniles, the case is open and active with an arrest warrant application anticipated. July 14, 2021, there was an altercation between a group of juveniles, an investigation by the Community Impact Unit, which is head by Sergeant Lou Brangi. The investigation resulted in the parties not wanting to pursue criminal charges. All involved are referred to YSS for diversion. 6/24/2021, there was a bullying incident between a large group of juveniles that was referred to YSS for diversion. May 21st, 2021, a simple disagreement between 2 juveniles that was also referred for diversion. May 2nd, 2021, there was a minor disturbance between a group of juveniles. There was nothing criminal found and the parties left the park. And May 24th, 2021, there was a harassment complaint which was rescinded by both parties. There were 2 reported criminal mischief complaints. March 31st, reports of graffiti and broken windows at the red building near the basketball courts. No witnesses or suspects and no video. April 30th, 2021, damage to the rear building of Doolittle Park to include broken windows. There were no suspects or witnesses to that vandalism. The Wallingford Patrol Division conducted 91 premise checks at Doolittle Park for the reported time. Consists of officers checking buildings, parking areas, and some instances playing basketball with some of the kids on the basketball court. As far as enforcement action goes, in many instances, the same individuals or group of individuals have been involved. Except for one investigation, the individuals involved primarily are under the age of 18. The Wallingford Police Department and Youth and Social Services have been working in conjunction with one another to address issues. Parents of the juveniles have been contacted and spoken with. There is a formal process in place for officers to send juveniles to the diversion program. Once the referral is reviewed and accepted by YSS, programs and services are initiated with the juvenile and their guardians. In the investigations where actions rose to criminal complaint, there was culpability on both parties, which resulted in parents and guardians electing not to pursue criminal charges. In those instances, the involved parties were still referred to the diversionary program. So what's our plan of action? Increased patrols and surveillance would be ideal, as we would agree. The Community Impact Unit and Lou Branch was formed in part to address specific issues targeted such as Doolittle Park. The unit was able to address these issues and conducted targeted enforcement at the park. What we've come into in 2021 is that our agency is stretched very thin. Entering 2021, we were carrying one vacancy as an agency. Since January of this year, we've seen the retirement of the chief, the uniformed services captain, 2 senior patrol lieutenants, a senior patrol sergeant, and the separation of 2 patrol officers. Additionally, there are 3 officers on workers' compensation and 1 on military leave, which leaves our agency down to 11, which is a substantial number for us. Leaves us at minimum patrol shifts and staffing levels. Our community impact unit has been used to support the patrol division, which has seen an increase in calls lately, especially around the Route 5 corridor. So basically what happened is our agency has gone from being very proactive to being very reactive based on staffing levels. So we need a little help. So our solutions in talking is we would like to form a community watch group specifically designed to address the issues of the park and Doolittle Park, comprised of the community. They can directly coordinate with Sergeant Brangie either through email or phone, so we know what areas needed to be targeted specifically and at what time of days that we're having specific issues and what juveniles are involved. I would also recommend that we install a camera system to cover 360 degrees of the park with a direct feed live to the Wallingford Police Dispatch Room, which we can monitor at all times. I spoke with the mayor, and he's for the project. I'm working with Kenny Michaels from Park and Rec, and we've been speaking with other municipalities to determine what program would be suitable for our needs and what the costs would be. The next portion will be juveniles in the roadways, but we can talk about this first, if there's any questions.
Councilor Testa, Chief's taking a break. Do you have questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right. Is the sound okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I had a couple of concerns when I brought this up, and that was, was there a widespread problem that our police agency was, having difficulty keeping up with? Or was it a matter of, a select small group of repeat offenders, if you will? And sometimes people will bring up the idea that, if there aren't enough recreational activities available in town, we give kids more things to do, they make it easier to stay out of trouble. But I know we've got a lot of kids in town. So if it's a matter of a very small select group, then maybe it's easier to make the determination that it's less a result or a matter of lack of activities and more a matter of, individuals who are problematic. But really, we're just looking for some clarification as to what the situation seemed like from the perspective of the law enforcement and Youth Service Bureau personnel. So I appreciate the report. It sounds like we've got an issue, as we were aware already, of staffing. It's easy to say let's get more positions filled, but I would hope that all efforts are being made to fill all available positions. The second part of my request had to do with potential remedial actions. I'm glad to hear that the chief mentioned the request for cameras. It seems pretty obvious that if we're having a hard time providing more on-site surveillance or patrolling, that it would be appropriate to have surveillance cameras that could be monitored from the police department, not only for activities that are happening when they're happening, but being able to look back when there are reports of potential harassment or crimes or whatever you might have. So I was going to make the case very strongly in support of the installation of a surveillance system at the park. However that comes around or comes up, I'll just go on record now as being strongly in favor of it, and I'd like to see it pursued. I'd like to see every effort made to increase police presence there, not so much from an enforcement perspective, but from just the idea of having better community policing opportunities. And I'm sure the police would agree that the more opportunities they have to interact with the youths, the better the relationship can be. And perhaps that adds to the ability to refer people over to the Youth Service Bureau and so forth. The only other thing I was thinking about, and I'm not here hammering, let's come down hard with law enforcement, but is there, how am I going to word this? You got certain people that are repeat offenders, if you will. I'm sure it's a very small group. I don't imagine we can prevent them from going to the park, but I mean, what is the chief's feeling on the idea of curfews that might exceed the current closing times that we have at the park? I'm not suggesting it is. I'm just throwing it all out there. You hear a lot of people talk about feeling uncomfortable going to the playground, and or the idea that there's instances of harassment, and I'm certain there's not a large element of people that are causing trouble. But is there anything we can do as a council? I mean, that's really all we can ask. Is there anything we can do as a council to support programs and/or policies that might make it easier for the police department to address what seems to be going on? I guess that's my question. I'll pose that to the chief.
Well, I think first, Councilor Testa, you're correct in that the majority of the people that we're dealing with the same people. Of the cases that I spoke about regarding the juvenile complaints, 4 of the more serious cases were from the same group of individuals. I have the police reports here regarding those cases, and it seems like every time our officers go out there, they deal with specific people. And doing a little more research on those individuals, we've both referred those individuals for diversionary issues, and in other instances outside of Doolittle Park, they've also been summoned criminally through the juvenile courts. It does not seem that there's any sort of distractions, diversions from their behavior that's occurring. So we feel that just as much as everyone else does, but that unfortunately is out of our control. As far as curfews go, I don't have any issues with curfews, but I would say that most of the incidents that are occurring during the daytime. And we haven't really had any issues after hours or after dark. Most of the cases that we're taking are happening right at the beginning of that 4 to 12 shift. And as far as programs, our officers would love to interact with the youth, and any programs that we can do in conjunction with that is a benefit to us. So if anyone has any ideas or any programs, we're open to that, and I'm sure that our officers would be too. We played 3-on-3 basketball at Lyman Hall. Our officers really enjoyed that, and it's something I think that we need to get back to. Give a friendly face to an officer and make them see him more as a friend and then a person that's there to enforce the laws. So anything that anyone could think of, we're more than welcome to entertain that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think I know personally I will reach out to the Youth Service Bureau and to look into, and I think we need to look into the idea that maybe there aren't enough things for these kids to be doing. Made enough opportunities, recreational opportunities. I really don't know, but I'd like to be able to look into that and hear from those people in town. I know there's only so much the police department can offer and suggest. I mean, it seems like there is an abundance of activities between the rec leagues and the park and rec and YMCA, but they all obviously have a cost involved. So I'd like to carry this on myself and down the road with discussions with those people that are involved more with youth and recreation to see if there's ways we can provide more opportunities to keep kids busy. So maybe they don't feel like they need to hang around and because they have nothing better to do. I know it doesn't sound like much, but I'm just trying to get the idea, get the conversation going. And I think it's also important that the public realize that what you, as a police agency, are doing on a daily basis to deal with this. And we'll just continue discussion further down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. We have questions from the council. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Chief. Lieutenant?
Sergeant.
Sergeant. Sorry.
Fine.
The repeat offenders, you mentioned if Youth and Social Services accepts them. What happens when they don't accept them?
So if they don't accept them, the alternative would be that Director Miranda could either send it back for referral for an arrest, or if there is no referral for that, or there's no probable cause or criminality for an arrest, then really nothing happens after that. It's either diversionary program or some sort of criminal offense, but there's no in between as of now.
And is it, Youth and Social Services the first one and the second one, we don't do that? What's the...
It just depends on the offense. If it's a first-time offense for someone or something minor, we try to use the diversionary program. But if it doesn't fit or the offense is too severe, then we'll go through the juvenile courts.
And you mentioned the watch group. I know we did a watch group out where I live years ago, and it seems to have helped. So you're talking like along Doolittle and the streets around there to get the neighborhood involved, see something, say something, and email tree and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think that would be important, and then have a meeting, either a monthly meeting, bi-weekly meeting, to discuss what the group sees and how we can address those issues if we're doing a good job, if we need to change what we're doing. I think it's important to get that feedback.
And the camera system, we're talking active or passive?
Active. So the camera system in some towns, and what I would like to implement in this town would be that the police dispatch has a live feed to the park, just like they would for our security system in our building, and they can click on whatever cameras they needed to monitor it, and it also saves it. So if we need something for evidence, or if there's two parties that we have a dispute as to what occurred, you can go to the camera system, and there's really no disputing what's on the camera.
Well, thank you for that. And then, I know when I used to work security years and years and years ago, we would tell somebody, don't come back here, otherwise you're going to get arrested for trespass. Is that an avenue? Because certainly criminal trespass in the first, which is a Class A misdemeanor, beginning part of the statute says if you have no license to be there, you're in violation. So is that something that you thought about or you're doing?
We could. I mean, in reading some of the police reports, it seems that when the officers are done dealing with the juveniles, that they do leave the park. They're not hanging around. If they're told to leave because of their behavior and they came back, I have no doubt that they would arrest them for criminal trespassing, but it doesn't seem in the review of the reports that that's been an issue with them coming back. It seems like once the officers deal with them, they end up going to the residence and the investigation continues from the residence, but they do return, obviously, down the road, and there's more problems that we ended up dealing with the same group.
Yeah, and that's the thing, so when we get a shoplifter and we say, do not come back to this store, otherwise you will be arrested, can you say, you got a timeout. You can't come back to Doolittle Park for a year, otherwise, your mere presence here, you're not allowed to be here. I have the authority to tell you that, and you will be charged with X, Y, and Z. I mean, you have the ability to do that.
Right, we could do that, absolutely. And if, like in a case like Walmart, they'll give you a trespass order where you get a piece of paper that says you're not allowed to return back to the place. If you do, it's criminal trespass in the first degree. I mean, the only issue with a juvenile is that really it's just a piece of paper at this point that they're getting. They're giving them a summons, and there really is no teeth behind it, I think, at this point for a criminal trespass first violation on a first offense. I mean, I think that subsequently, if you have, numerous offenses, that it might make a difference, but for some of the people that are getting multiple summonses and nothing's happening, it's kind of emboldening them to keep doing the behavior that they're doing, which creates a problem for us.
Well, as you know, I'm very involved with juvenile justice through the state and, a lot of changes. So, you know, I think if you start issuing, you know, on the 3rd or 4th, you know, criminal trespass.
Carry on.
Thank you. You know, I think, you know, not for the first and not for the second, but certainly, you know, if we get repeat offenders and people are staying away from our parks because of this bad activity, you know, you get a kid in court, juvenile court with a couple of Class A misdemeanors, I think under the changes that we're talking about that a judge is going to perk up. So, but I thank you coming and having the discussion, and I'm certainly in favor of what's before us. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think what bothers me the most is that the neighboring residents who want to be able to walk to that park with their children and use it appropriately, in many instances don't feel comfortable, and in other instances don't feel safe. You know, I think that's, we heard about this several months ago. I think after last summer this came before us, and it seems to be a reoccurring problem. So, you know, I think many of us would support some type of step up if it involves cameras, great. I mean, I think there's going to be a process involved. I think you're going to talk to the mayor about that, and it'll come back before us for appropriation. And I appreciate the engagement, you know, trying 3-on-3 basketball. I mean, I know I've seen video on social media of Wallingford police officers, you know, stopping a cruiser to hop out of the car and play some pickup basketball with some neighborhood kids. And I do think that type of engagement, I mean, certainly something that wasn't part of my childhood, is important, because I think there are kids who should feel comfortable talking to you about anything, even if it's what other kids are doing. I think that's helpful to you. Before we go to the public, I think you took a pause because you were next going to talk about traffic. You know, I can tell you, as someone who walks through the downtown regularly and drives through the downtown regularly, that there is certainly, since in the past 14 months, an escalation of activity there that, you know, as a motorist, you have to be vigilant, you know, not to get hit by a cyclist. So we will go to the public, but I want to hear about that first.
So in talking, like we've already said, I mean, I think in dealing with a lot of the juveniles that are, you know, for people that don't know, normally between South Elm, South Main Ward, all the way down to probably North Main and Christian, you know, juveniles are seen in, you know, packs of maybe 5 or 10 on bicycles, performing tricks, driving in and out of traffic, creating, you know, multitude of issues and safety concerns. So, and like we said, in speaking to them and stopping them, it's out of boredom. You know, it's out of a lack of things to do. It's not exactly the right thing to do, and they're creating, you know, issues with that. The kids that we have dealt with have been respectful. We've stopped them. Every single time we stopped them, we brought their parents down. They've taken their bikes in some cases. It definitely has subsided to a point. It's still some isolated pockets of that, but in speaking to the kids and Sergeant Cadet, who was enforcing a lot of the bike stuff before he was promoted, spoke with some of the individuals, and they said, you know, why are you guys not riding anymore? And they said that we don't want to deal with you anymore. It's just a hassle having our parents come down and having our bikes take away. So there's been an impact. I still see the traffic even from my window, but it's gotten better. Something that is very concerning is the 300 to 400 bicycles, ATVs, dirt bikes, and motorcycles that originate from the New Haven area and take over roadways. I don't know if people are aware of it. 2 times now in Wallingford, going down Route 5, we've had, you know, packs of almost 400 people just take over Route 5. That's a serious concern. There's at that point it becomes how are my 6 or 7 patrol units going to protect the public, not really enforce what is going on in the roadway, because it's almost impossible. You know, the bikes and the motorcycles and the ATVs are unregistered. They don't have insurance on most of them. Most of the people that are operating them are juveniles, and we have that whole issue with trying to pursue not only a juvenile, but a dirt bike, which we're not going to do or create that safety issue. Sergeant Brangie has been personally involved in which organized car group takes over parking lots Holiday Cinemas was taken over. There's about 300, 400 cars doing tricks in the middle of the parking lot, videotaping it. When we arrived to try to break it down, they drove at us to try to intimidate us to get out of the parking lot. So the organized groups are what really, I think, creates a substantial safety issue. I understand that the juveniles and the roadways do create an issue, but nothing to the level that we're seeing with these organized groups that are coming and taking over the roadways.
And how many ways can you cut up your time? We do have a question from Councilor Morgenstein.
Yes, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I was appreciative to hear the new chief mention neighborhoods. I would like to hope that we can reinitiate the Coalition for a Better Wallingford doing some of the neighborhood meetings that they had done way back at the beginning, where a police officer and people in the neighborhood would come together, because those had been very useful. On that thought, when I attended the Park and Rec Commission meeting and we were talking about cameras, another thing that had come up was that some towns have a juvenile justice group that works both professional and public to help these sorts of issues. And again, I wonder whether the coalition or some of the neighbors from Doolittle might be interested in working on something like that.
I'm all for that program, Counselor, and I think that we also should probably include Amanda Miranda too, since she does work on the diversion program, but I'm all for that, and I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, no, I think we have people that would be very good in that vein, and that's another thing along with the camera consideration. All right, thank you.
Before I go to the public, Councilor Testa, did you have anything else?
Can we get a status from the administration on where we are, where they are, regarding getting cameras installed, as the rec department has requested and the chief indicated is suggested?
We're awaiting more detail about what type of surveillance system, cost, obviously. So until we receive that, we won't be able to take any action.
And Councilor Testa, we have quotes from various vendors. We've spoken to Fairfield. Kenny Michaels has put it out to the Park and Rec Commission throughout the state that he deals with. So we have information from Fairfield, from New Britain. We have pending information from Oxford. We have information from Hamden about their systems. Each one is different. Some of them run off a secure IP address. Some of them run off a cellular. Some of them run off a cloud. But what we have to do is be able to integrate whatever we use into our dispatch software so that we can live feed it from the police department. So we have a multitude of different vendors. We just have to see which one fits for our agency.
I appreciate that. Last thing I will just say is this. I've seen firsthand the benefit of having a school resource officer. I've always believed in community policing. I've long advocated for beat policemen downtown. I think when our police officers are able to be present and interact and get to know whomever, it only leads to positive results. In fact, it could lead to, potentially positive outcomes with kids that might have problems going on in their lives that even the Youth Service Bureau may not be able to get a hold of. So I am all for anything we can do to have as close to a constant police presence in the park area during the summer, spring and summer months, as we can get. So how far do you think we are from that, Chief? As far as, I'm not saying 24, every single minute and every hour, but how far are we from being able to have an officer being around there on a fairly regular basis when we know there's activity?
So our officers right now do check the park regularly, I would say. But our patrol division, if we're running 6 cars on days or 7 cars on nights, that the staffing gets chewed up pretty quick, especially on 4 to 12, dealing with from anywhere from Walmart and ShopRite all the way down to include the increase in domestic violence calls that we're getting. So we get chewed up pretty quick as far as staffing goes. The community impact unit, they address the park issues as much as they can, and like I said, the only time that they're not really down there is when they need to supplement patrol staffing. So if we have a call, I mean, for example, we had the shooting that occurred like a month ago. So Sergeant Brangy and his crew that were out there in the community impact function, dealing with certain issues such as the park, had to get called off of that to go assist in that investigation. Just in full transparency, I hope to have 3 people in this upcoming September Police Academy. There's a outstanding lateral certification test that closes August 27th that we hope to utilize, and I have 2 more seats in the January Police Academy. So my hope is that by the spring of next year, we can be back to full staffing, which really at this point, there will never be a conversation about staffing issues or people that we need as far as patrols, because we would have that. Right now, we're just kind of playing kind of a twofold as a impact unit and as a supplemental unit.
Right. Yeah, that's understandable. And obviously, the more reactive you need to be, the more it becomes a focus on enforcement as opposed to relationship building and community policing, which is the type of thing I'd like to see us do more of. And the last thing I'll just say is it looks like it's time we probably should start reconsidering expanding the recreational offerings that we have for the kids. We've got places like Garden Road, we've got properties, and maybe it's time to look back at putting in a skate park or some kind of teen center, some kind of activity area where we can provide somewhere where more activities that don't cost money for individuals to participate in, because it just saves us all in the long run. But thank you very much for your report and the back and forth, and for everybody's time on this one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm all set.
Thank you. Councilor Shortell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, congratulations on your new role. You answered, both times you've answered the question I had. I was going to ask you before, how many openings do you have? You answered 11 if you count the people on short term. You just answered the question I had to follow that up in my head, which was, where are we to fill them? So you're saying that you anticipate the 5 open positions, and then as well as the various people who are out by next spring, you think you'll be fully staffed. My only question then really is off of something Councilor Testa brought up. With the school resource officers, I know that we have, is it 2 officers split among the 4 schools?
Right, so we have 2 officers. We have Officer Boyle and Officer Megan-Bauer.
And are they, as we're going back now, everyone's going back in the buildings in a few weeks. Are they going to be back on their usual schedule despite the fact that you're short-staffed everywhere else? Is that?
So that community impact unit, we're trying everything that we can to not have to pull them into patrol as a normal function, as a zone function, because the community impact unit is so important to what we need to do. I mean, if you look at Officer Boyle, for example, she's doing the robbery prevention program. She's doing a program that addresses car break-ins. She has an entire month plan for domestic violence that we want to pull off. It's extremely important. So everything that we have planned with them, we want to continue with. So my last resort is to pull special services in the patrol, and we're not there yet. So our SROs are going back normally like they would.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chief.
Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just the traffic thing came up, so it was after, and is there something that we can do for you with regard to that? I don't want to micromanage, but, I'm very concerned about that situation.
I mean, as far far as it goes, I mean, Sergeant Brangi utilized our dashboard cameras to make, multitude of arrests and issue infractions and basically shut down that group. So we just need, to use our technology. We have body cameras now, we have dashboard cameras, and in order to deal with that, we have to make those arrests, basically through technology. So film them as they're driving by. We have outlets that we have with New Haven County to try to identify some of the participants and then, do follow-up enforcement via warrant by then. That's what we did with the ringleader of the car club that came in. Sergeant Brangi and his unit went out there and, surveyed tons of video footage, based on the internet and based on cruiser cameras and, kind of put that case together. And then they never came back. And I don't think they came back to any other places after that.
And then you mentioned a certain location that the congregation was going, that I did see on a Friday night, and I was a little amazing. You getting cooperation from the property owner and all that stuff? Okay, I just want to. Yeah. Okay, no problem. Thank you.
All right, members of the public. Ladies first.
Shauna Glidden, 29 Pomeroy Avenue. I live literally at the end of Doolittle Park where the basketball court is in the red building. So this problem's been going on for a really long time. I think I spoke at the last time this was brought up at town council, and I was working with Chief Wright on some things, but I had a surgery and then he retired, so that kind of fell away. I know for a fact that my neighborhood in particular would be really interested in being part of a community watch. But I think that what we're seeing is actually something that can't be addressed just with you, and I'm kind of disappointed that Parks and Rec is not here, nor is Youth and Social Services, because I think that this is a bigger overall issue. I've tried to get a meeting with Kenny since March and haven't been able to, and the response I've had from Youth and Social Services is to call the police. Now you're saying once we call you guys and you guys show up that then you're referring them over to Youth and Social Services. I'd like to know a little bit as a community member, what is that program like? What are we doing with these kids once they're sent over there, which is something that you guys can't answer. I am not for giving children an arrest record and putting them into that system, so I think it's wonderful that you're referring them over to Youth and Social Services, but I do think we need to look at that program and see what is being done with those kids, because obviously it's not working if they keep coming back. A child was beat up recently. I can't bring my kids to the park. I won't let my son play basketball unless I'm sitting on the front porch watching him. He's 14. He should be able to play basketball at the end of my road. There's been just a slew of issues. When I worked in New York, I worked with the police to address domestic violence issues, and one of the things that we had a problem with was community outreach with the Hispanic community. So what we did was we developed monthly events when the weather was good, not during the winter, with a picnic with the police. I think that that would be great to see something where we get together with the kids, and I'm glad that you're open to those ideas. I'd also like to see the council appoint some kind of committee to see what's being done in a holistic scale. So not just with the police, not just with Youth and Social Services, but with all of those parties together, and appoint members not just of the community, but of each of those departments and also of some of our not-for-profits. I think what Mr. Testa said about kids not having things to do is really true. I mean, we have a park that should be designated for children 12 and under. That's really what those playscapes are designed for. And you have teenagers hanging out there, cursing, playing loud music, being aggressive. My daughter, well, she was 4 at the time, it's a 3-wheel scooter, so I wouldn't call it a tricycle. I don't really know what the word for that is, was stolen and thrown into the river. When we brought this up to other parents to try to start a conversation, because I do have a teenager, so we try to reach out to his friends' parents, we were told that they have a right to be there, and that if you know this is going on, you just shouldn't bring your children. That to me is a bad response, and so maybe we need to also be working with the parents who, one, might not be aware of what's going on, but who, two, are aware and then aren't doing something about that. So maybe Youth and Social Services should have a program about parenting and helping to deal with children who are maybe not listening to them. Additionally, I think that the cameras are great. I think it's a wonderful step. That red building has got to go. That red building is a haven for vandalism, graffiti, drug use, and sexual intercourse that is then being posted online. You have instances where, no, it is. It's on Snapchat. You can laugh, but it is. It's happening. You have a potential for rape over there, which is a serious problem. It's 3 out of 5 women in this country are raped, and that doesn't include young men who could also be victims of that, especially in this age group. It's a real problem. We also need lighting. And I know lighting is more of a comprehensive issue because it's going to have to do with how are we going to get electric to those areas. But the walkway over by the bridge over the river is dark. The area over by the red building is dark, over by the river is dark, and over by the basketball court, if you're not on the courts themselves, that's dark. And I know that it's not really a nighttime issue, but still having those added things will help with the problem. I also had a question about how many, you said you had a community division. How many officers are within that division? Is it just the 2? 5? Okay.
So actually, when I took over in July, I collapsed agency services and I put them into community impact to add more people to that. So there was 5 plus 1 sergeant.
Okay, so that is a recent change because when I was talking to Chief Raid, I'm pretty sure there was only 2 and someone in charge who, like a sergeant or something. I was a little confused about how it was set up. And one of the things we had discussed was the need for an increase in the number of officers within that division. But I do know staffing is a huge issue. And I just want to thank you guys because you are very responsive. We've called a few times. I'm one of your phone calls on your list. My neighbors are too. And there's always a response, and someone does always come out, but usually those kids are gone. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and if you'd like to give me a call, we can set up how we would go about putting that committee together, because I think that's very important.
Absolutely. I will give you my phone number before you leave. And counselors, if you want to put together a committee that addresses this with all those agencies, because it does, I've done this kind of work in the past, I really have, and it does have a big impact, but you cannot do it if you section it off and break it into individual groups. The coalition can't just do it, the police department can't just do it, Parks and Rec can't just do it, and Youth and Social Services can't just do it. You have to come together because it is a community-wide issue that needs all of those agencies acting together as one. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Ross.
Ray Ross, Silver Pond Apartments. I am also a member of the Center Street Cemetery Board. And for a few years back, we were having problems with a little vandalism and just a lot of illicit activity in the cemetery. And we were faced with an option of either locking the gates or something else. And if we lock the gates, then the police can't get in. So we went and we've installed a system of cameras in the cemetery. And it's proven very effective. A lot of the illicit activity, a lot of the stuff getting dropped into by the graves has dried up, it has stopped. If a person walks into the cemetery, the director of the cemetery, he gets a notice on his cell phone and he looks at it and the camera can easily identify the person and the car and the marker number. And we've tested it numerous times. I've gone in there all hours of the day and night in my car, and I'm not even halfway into the cemetery, and I get a phone call from them saying, I just saw you come in. So cameras are very effective. They're day and night. At nighttime, it's activated, and the light comes on, and the person's photographed. And it has cut it way down, so they're very effective. I strongly recommend it. Cameras in Doolittle Park. Thank you.
I just had one more question because it just occurred to me. Oh, Shauna, 29 Pomeroy Avenue, Wallingford. Can you use films from Ring cameras?
Yes, absolutely. And we've used them for numerous car break-ins to solve.
Okay, that's wonderful because most of us have Ring cameras and we have gotten vandalism on camera. So I think that if we knew that we could send that in, that would be awesome. Thank you.
So all officers now have external email addresses that you can send them directly to the police officer that you're dealing with. So you can send it into the system for evidence. So we turn on their email systems.
That's wonderful. Is that something that you can post on Facebook? It's community outreach. No, really, I know it sounds silly, but like a lot of people are on there. And if you put that out there.
We don't have a Facebook page, but.
All right, send me the information, I'll put it on Facebook.
I think we're all set. Thank you very much for your time and your efforts in this regard, and I guess we'll see you again when we figure out what kind of camera system we're looking at.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. All right, with that, we are on to item 9, which is discussion and possible action regarding the purchase and installation of air conditioning at the animal shelter as set forth in an animal shelter resolution that was included in our packets. Councilor Tada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is mine on? Are they on?
Forward.
Okay,
Now
here
you
we
are.
go. We discussed a lot of this at the last ordinance committee, so I don't need to rehash that entire conversation because it was quite extensive, as you all know. After the meeting, based on our discussion, I did draft this resolution along with Councilor Testa, and the main points of it are, as we discussed at Ordinance Committee, we feel that we do, as the council, have the authority to administer gift or grant money. And so the first part of this resolution just gives the section of the charter, which is Chapter 3, Section 5, which states that the town council can accept gifts and to administer those gifts. And then the second section discusses the gift that was received in 2009 by the then council in the amount of $691,980 from the Susan Jewell estate. And that will stated that the funds be used, quote, for the purpose of improving and maintaining the health and well-being of the animals, cats and dogs alike, and for the purpose of improving the physical structures and buildings for the benefit of the animals housed therein. So with those 2 points, I will make a motion that the town council authorizes the expenditure of an amount necessary determined by town bidding and purchasing protocols to supply and install air conditioning in the kennel area of the Wallingford Animal Shelter located at 5 Pent Road.
Second.
Your mic is off. I think the clerk got both. Moved and seconded.
Tester.
Councilor Testa, I hear a lot of noise. Did you want to talk? Councilor Testa?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just clarifying that I wanted to second the motion.
We got that. Thank you.
Very good. I'm good for now.
Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I don't have a pet. I don't have a domesticated animal at home.
I thought you had cats.
Well, quite frankly, I used to have a cat. And the problem, the reason why I don't have a pet is I get too damn attached to the pet. And, you know, my last cat we had for 17 years, and I can tell you stories all day long. But, you know, Susan Jewell leaving her bequest is quite unusual. And to me, it doesn't matter whether or not it's acceptable to have air conditioning. I think the air conditioning at heart here is a benefit. And I think that if Susan Jewell was sitting here tonight and had her checkbook and she was asked the question of whether or not she wanted to pay for this, she'd definitely say yes. So it doesn't matter. It could be a luxury. It's not to me, but it could be. But I think that the benefit that was granted to this town, to these animals, is certainly welcome whether it be a luxury, whether it be a necessity, period. So I'm fully in support of the resolution. And, you know, I think that we become the gatekeeper to the air conditioning being installed. Where it goes from there, I think it's a different question. But I do have a question for the mayor, and I'm not going to ask whether or not it's going to happen, because I know somebody else is going to ask that, but just logistically, some questions for the mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I know there had been talk about an alternative facility for the animal shelter. Is there any prospect of that happening?
I'm not aware of a serious discussion about a new facility somewhere else.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know, because, you know, certainly I wouldn't want, you know, I want the expenditure to happen, I want the infrastructure to be there, but if at the same time there's plans going on to build another building, I wouldn't want the money to be spent, you know, Mrs. Jewell's bequest to be spent unnecessarily. So that's all I had, and, you know, Godspeed. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else on the council? Councilor Morgenstein? Councilor Tata?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify, too. I don't think us authorizing this necessarily means it has to be central air conditioning. You know, if there are going to be repairs to the building or you know, if that's in talks, you know, to possibly do a new building, it doesn't need to be central air. There's so many options for air conditioning. I know at work last week I got a huge catalog from you know, a company selling all different sorts of air conditioning systems, you know, some freestanding. So I just wanted to clarify, I think just in the interest of time, we don't have to just look at central air. I think there's other options that we can look at. Thank you.
There being no further discussion on the council, is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak? Name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Mariah. I'm at 990 Yale Avenue again. This is my mother. She's been working with me on this whole process, so I apologize if this is a little weird. We're kind of a tag team.
Hi. As Mariah said, she had called me to, my name is Jean Melendez, and I don't live in town. However, she rents, and I've been looking to get her a place so she can live in town. Besides, I'm in Wallingford all the time. It's a great town. You have 3 vegan restaurants. I'm a vegan. It's a place I love to come to. So I wanted her to stand with me because she's the one who gave me a phone call and said, Mom, this is what's going on in the shelter. Can you help me out? And so this has really been her baby, and I'm only supporting her in doing the things that she had wanted to do. So I do have 2 questions, one for the mayor and then one for the council. When she spoke before, you said that, and she asked you when you could do the air conditioning and how quick could that be. And you shared that you were waiting to hear for information from the new ACO. I know that she had asked under the Freedom of Information Act, she got documents from you, and in those documents, it shared that ACO Ellers had asked in 2018 for the same air conditioning, stating that the conditions there in the heat were inhumane and unbearable. What is different now for you to ask the new ACO when the conditions, at least from my understanding, are the same?
Well, the conditions really aren't the same in the building. At the time that the ACO requested the air conditioning in 2018, out of the 26 windows, I think well over half were unopenable, broken in some way. There was serious disrepair with the windows. Obviously, that affects air circulation, and we immediately notified Public Works to correct, improve, replace the screens and windows. Many of them were crank windows. They could no longer be opened. So that was accomplished, and basically the issue didn't return as far as being a need, not to my knowledge.
But
At this time, we still had some windows. When this issue came up, there were some windows and screens, but not nearly in that number. Some have been repaired. Some we're still waiting for screens. But the new ECO has been keeping track of temperatures, and he will be making recommendations, and we can go forward. But certainly, the earlier occasion, there was serious disrepair, and that needed to be fixed. And that's a difference.
Just a follow-up question, if it's okay. In terms of, so opening up windows, though when it's 90 and 91 and 92 degrees, how does that benefit the animals?
Well, it was air circulation.
No, I understand.
So there was a fan that wasn't working, or fans that weren't working, and those, as far as I remember, needed repair also. So there was the whole system there was in disrepair, and we needed to gain some experience on exactly what would be improved as a result of those repairs being made. And they were made, and basically the issue didn't surface until just recently.
I guess when I read the letter from the ACO, she said that there were mobile units, I guess air conditioning units in that letter, correct?
The mobile units are in the office portion of the kennel.
Okay.
They're not in the kennel itself.
Right, but she said that didn't help it didn't help the air circulation, right? And you're saying I'm just trying to clarify, and you're saying that at that time, when she wrote that no windows opened at all in the kennel? I'm just trying to understand.
I'm
sorry?
I don't understand the question.
So I was asking, my original question was, what's different? And you said that there was repair done to the windows, crank window, right, to get circulation.
Well, the difference is the number of windows and the amount of repair that had to be performed. That hadn't been reported earlier. The windows were in disrepair as well as fans. So all of that was repaired then.
And I guess so I won't be circular. So you believe because the windows are open, there is no longer a problem, that there is no need for air conditioning?
I wasn't aware that there was a continuing problem as a result of those repairs being completed.
But now you're aware.
But recently the issue has resurfaced. Again, we found that windows weren't in proper repair. Since the new ACO has been there, he's been keeping careful track of temperatures, et cetera, and I expect we'll have reports that indicate what he would suggest as far as improvements.
So I guess final answer is that you don't feel, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if the windows are working, you don't feel that air conditioning is necessary?
Well, it relates to temperature, and we need to know what the actual conditions are there. Certainly, I've been informed that for most shelters in the state, the kennel portions are not air conditioned for a number of reasons, some of which relate to exposure to outside and difficulty in putting air conditioning in them. I don't know what all of that's why I have no experience working in or being in charge of a kennel. That's why I rely upon the ACO to inform and indicate what is necessary. And so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and I know that other kennels, other shelters, some do not. Some do have air conditioning, but they also don't have this fund, this $700,000 that was given for the benefit of the animals. And that's, of course, why my daughter started this group.
And it's good that we have a fund, but there still has to be justification for using money. And that's why I rely upon the professionals we hire who do the work to advise, and then we can take a direction once they've had a chance to substantiate what the conditions are and what needs improvement, what doesn't.
I know at the last meeting, I think Councilperson Morgenstern invited the current ACO here. Was that accurate?
Councilor Morgenstein did request his presence.
And did he decide not to come?
No, at this time, they are understaffed. He's in the process of getting his feet on the ground and being in charge of the kennel. I believe they have attempted some offers of employment. At this time, I'm not sure that they've been able to add any additional staff. So basically, 2 people are employed to be at the shelter and provide the services and care. They're flat out, and to be coming to meetings and discussing when we need to give them a chance to make recommendations, make sure that everything is running properly, and we will move ahead once that occurs. I expect it in the near future, but that's the situation now. We need his and his assistant's attention at the shelter right now.
Ma'am, if I may?
Yes.
So our rules say each speaker gets 3 minutes, and we have 20 minutes per public comment per item. And I think there are other people who want to speak. I just saw some movement in the gallery. So if you wouldn't mind stepping back, if we could let some other people talk, and if there's time, we'll have you come back up. Thank you so much. Sure. Name and address for the record, please, and then Mr. Reynolds.
My name is Holly Fontaine. I am with a group called Desmond's Army. Don't know if you're familiar with us. We have the first law in the United States where we have a pro bono attorney go and stand up for the abused animal. I go, along with other volunteers from Desmond's Army, to every single animal abuse case in Connecticut. We go sometimes 5 days a week.
Ma'am, if you could get closer to the mic, it would be helpful.
Sometimes 5 days a week, sometimes 2 cases a day. It's pretty disturbing to me, and I didn't say where I was from. I'm from Vernon. I'm almost 20 minutes from the Mass line. But when somebody in my group posted that this was a situation and that the money was allocated here, and you can do something to make a change in an animal's life, I don't see why this is taking so long. And with climate the way that it is, one day you're hot, 90 degrees, humidity at 98%, people can't breathe, they're passing out. What do you think that animal is going through with a fur coat on? What they feel, we feel. This room is air conditioning. Why? It's not 90 degrees out. Do you need it? Would you have sat in your office without AC or your homes last week as bad as it was? Think about it. Think about what they feel. I'm really serious. I don't understand. And you're saying the ACO, the ACO. What is your time frame from getting this ACO on board, evaluating, is it hot in this place? Yes, it is. And you can go from, Connecticut weather, 90 degrees 1 minute with humidity at, whatever, to 60 and you're freezing. I mean, one Memorial Day I was walking my dog with mittens on, and then the next day you got shorts on because you're so hot. It's crazy. You can't predict the weather. I know you can predict that things are getting worse, and it's just not fair, especially when you have a town that has the money that this woman left you. What a gift. What an amazing opportunity to change some animals' lives. So, and then the other question, are you going to put heat? Is there heat? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Will you add, if you do the AC, will you add heat? I'd like to know the time frame of when you're going to get the ACO going and to evaluate this. Is there a, shouldn't be that hard.
I expect it very shortly. He started work in July, it's now August, so I don't think it's quite a month at this point, and I would expect fairly soon we'll be able to make a decision. But, you know, we hire people with expertise to provide the advice. At the point I spend any public money without the appropriate protocols, in my opinion, I shouldn't be in office, because my views are mine, and where we have people with greater expertise, they should be listened to, and maybe they're not always right, but they need to be listened to.
Did anybody know the temperature in that place last week when it was brutal?
The ACO has told me that they've been keeping regular tracking of the temperatures. I know a lot of people have air conditioning. I can tell you personally, I have none at home, so I know how hot it gets. I sleep when it's hot. I don't have air conditioning, so I know.
But you don't have a fur coat on either.
Well, I'm not saying it.
I know. I'm just
saying I don't live in air conditioning, so I am well aware of the variation in temperatures, the effect of humidity, everything else. I'm not isolated. I know about it. So,
no, I know.
And so I like to, if we trust people to make judgments for the town and provide their expertise,
well,
then that's what we need.
That's good. I just think that after a month of being there with what we just endured, you would be well aware to say, this really is an issue, or, geez, this building all of a sudden has a nice breeze going through it. It doesn't take that long. Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds.
Pat Reynolds, 844 Old Durham, excuse me. A couple of items. First, there was the issue about the windows. Okay, so really what we're talking about is an outside temperature, especially 2 days last week, where the outside temperature was well into the 90s, combined with the relative humidity, you had a heat index of well over 100, 105, 106. You can knock all the walls out, knock the ceiling out, and that's what the temperature is going to be in that building. You know, the weather service, when they give you a temperature, it's not out in the sun, it's in the shade. So once again, yes, being able to open the windows would replenish the air, add oxygen, take out some of the CO2, but it's really not going to have, if the outside temperature, or worse yet, the heat index is 105, it's not going to help anything by having all the windows open. Another item is, I noticed when I was down there, the front windows, well, if you look at the driveway or the parking area, which is black asphalt, abuts the building. So be honest with you, unless there's a nice cool breeze blowing across that driveway, I would be reluctant to open those windows, because you're going to have a surface temperature on that asphalt probably well exceeding 100 degrees. One last item, I would also just recommend that if you do put this out for, for the air conditioning, also inquire about a dehumidifier. All right, because I mentioned this last month. You know, it ain't the heat, it's the humidity. Well, it should be a two-prong attack. Yes, you reduce the temperature, but you also want to reduce the humidity, and actually from a infrastructure standpoint, reducing the relative humidity, or actually having a high humidity, especially cool temperatures, you may start to get rot if there's wood. Paper products may start to, absorb that moisture and disintegrate. So again, air conditioning definitely, and also look into relative humidity. I mean a dehumidifier. Thank you.
Thank you.
Or can I go on for another 20?
Well, I see people dancing in their seats, so you might have to fight with them for more time. It was a joke. I'm not encouraging fighting.
Hi, my name is Kathy Rajunas. I too am a member of Desmond's Army. I don't live in Wallingford. I live in your neighboring town, Northford. But for, about a year and a half, I spent every Tuesday or Wednesday reading to the dogs in your kennel. It was a program that Katie, your ACO, had initiated. And I noticed the difference in the animals when the public came and interacted with them. It was a wonderful feeling. I could imagine the feeling that woman had when she donated that huge amount of money to the animals. I was only there maybe a couple hours an evening, and I walked away with my heart filled with joy. I could imagine, could you, when you gave that much money to help the animals in your town? Who does that? Use her money for what she wanted you to use it for. She asked you to use it for the animals. I plead with you to do this. It's the right thing to do. Don't accept money from an individual in your town unless you're willing to spend it in the manner in which she gave it. Also, because I was in your kennels once a day for a week, once a day per week, I can tell you that the animals in back, no windows are going to help them, and no windows are going to circulate any air back there. Have any of you been to the kennel? Have any of you gone inside in the back where the animals are? There's 8 kennels in back and 8 kennels in front, and the ones in back are the unadoptable dogs. They're not privy to those open windows. There's no windows in back. So if you open those windows, even if you fix those windows, it's not going to affect them at all. Go and visit your kennels. Don't wait for the ACO now to tell you what's going on. Go there yourselves on a hot day. That's the only way you're going to know, not by someone's report. I thank you for listening to me. I thank you for allowing me to interact with your animals because they're all of God's creatures. Thank you.
Thank you. We're out of time, but I'm going to allow one more speaker, ma'am.
Irene Kawarko, 75 Brentwood Drive. Mr. Chairman, is it possible that the council can give a date by which the ACO's reporting has to be received, since every meeting it seems that that's the reason why any action is being continued, because there is no report from the new ACO. Can you come up with a date?
Well, ma'am, I can tell you that the council is going to vote on this resolution tonight. That's going to happen. The ACO reports to the administration. My understanding for something I read is that it was a couple of weeks.
Yes, I mean, it should be a pretty short period of time. Mr. Gibbs. That's what he indicated.
Yes. I think he had said publicly that he needed 2 weeks or something. So I think it's imminent.
But you're not requiring a particular date.
We can't.
You can't.
We can't dictate to the administration that something be done by a particular time.
Can we beg you?
I want as much as anyone else to do what's right, but I do believe that procedures must be followed. There's got to be the track record that defends the expenditure of any public money, and that's what we look to do. If it becomes just, well, I want to feel good about it and please you, and I spend public money, you would feel good, but in the long run, other people might be fairly upset that I didn't use the proper procedures to use public money. So I see it as a trustee, a fiduciary responsibility, and I won't depart from that. But by the same token, I have concerns that we do things properly for the animals there, that the shelter is properly cared for, and we'll look to do everything possible to have that occur.
I know I'm on borrowed time, but are you receiving feedback from anyone who doesn't sympathize with this situation and want conditions to be comfortable for the animals that are in our care?
I certainly have heard from plenty of people who want to see air-conditioned circumstances in the shelter. However, I'm also aware that on any governmental action, people are also concerned that we follow the proper procedures.
And that's been expressed.
And that's what
to
we're
you?
doing.
That's been expressed by citizens?
It has been expressed, certainly, over the years. It's never the numbers that might come out on a specific issue, but when money is improperly handled, and we all know of instances where government we don't think has done things properly, our confidence and trust in government is damaged because shortcut was taken, something was done that was not quite what you'd expect. Oh, but it was for a good purpose. Well, I'm troubled by that because at that point, the trust in government to do things properly has been damaged. I take it very seriously, and I look to try to follow those protocols so that whatever the good purpose is, it's done in a manner that doesn't become an example of where things were maybe done for the benefit of something, but the process used was damaging, and if used for all things, very few people would be supportive.
I'm just not seeing it as such a controversial issue. And I also, if I can say, don't want to see this continued and continued and continued. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Something came up and I just wanted to ask a question. We do have heat in the kennels, correct? Does anyone?
I could guess, but I'm not going to respond to that. I believe there's heat there, but I can't state for certain that I'm aware.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I assumed, but now, I mean, I don't know. Now I think maybe I might want to change my motion to add and heat, if that's appropriate. I mean, I never thought we wouldn't have heat, and I'm hoping we do. But
We have a little time to put heat in.
well, you would think. I guess I guess I'll amend my motion to say install air conditioning and heating just in case. So I don't know if the second would.
I'll amend my second as well.
Okay. And hopefully that part is just not an issue, but I'd rather say it tonight than have to bring this up again. And then my second point is just, I think the whole point of this and why I brought out the part of the charter and why I spent so much time talking about that at ordinance is because the way that I'm reading Chapter 3, Section 5 of the charter, and I think there seemed to be consensus of this during ordinance committee, is that we have the ability to spend this money. We, the council, it says if there is a gift and a council accepts it, which a council did accept it, that the council provides for the proper administration of the same. So I think we just need to focus on that, and I think that was the point of the resolution, is that we are saying this is how we want this money spent. A gift is different than budgeted items per the charter, and so that was the goal in this. Thank you.
Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From my perspective, just speaking for myself, I don't care what most shelters have. The point is that the language in the bequest talks about improving, not only once but twice. and it doesn't make it contingent upon what the ACO believes to be appropriate. So I gotta say, I'm a little concerned that it's taken a month for this new town employee to opine on this very slender issue. And I have to question, and I hope at some time I'll be able to ask that question, because, I mean, I guess ultimately this body has the ability to investigate any department on the vote of 3. I don't want to have to go there, but I'm a little concerned that we are in the heat of summertime. This is obviously a pressing issue, and the resolution before us talks about supplying and installing air conditioning. It isn't just, you know, to do the bidding and all of that stuff, so I would hope that there is support for the resolution as drafted and presented, no matter what somebody else who's new to the office determines that they think is appropriate, because I think it's this body's determination, and by perhaps passing this resolution, that we have determined that it's not only necessary, but it's within line of what the bequest had originally intended. So, you know, at first blush, it seems like such a minor issue. And I'm befuddled and bemused, but I don't think it's funny. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Shortell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to that lady's comment about a date, I mean, we can certainly put it on our next agenda to get an update. September 14th, I think, is our next meeting. So, I mean, I'll send you an email and put it on. I mean, I think we all want to get an update anyway, and we can get the update. And we're not dictating it, but it's on the agenda, so we can, that's something. So we can do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Fishbein.
Yes.
Laughlin.
Yes.
Marone.
Yes.
Morgenstein.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, we're having difficulty with our connections here. I don't know if it's appropriate, but Councilor Morgenstein did text that she was in favor of this. I don't know if we can cast a ballot on her behalf.
We'll note your comment for the record.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Shortell.
Yes.
Tata.
Yes.
Testa.
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni.
Yes. The motion passes. We're going to skip ahead to item 11. Mr. Barone, thank you for your patience. Before your motion?
Good evening.
I think you're going to get a motion before you get started.
Sorry.
I just wanted to clarify, so that we're going to motion to award the bid, right? But then are we motioning to authorize to go out and seek more quotes? Is that?
Do you want to hear about it before you move it?
Yes, that's what I thought we were doing too.
Go ahead. Mr. Barone, tell us about the second part of this experience.
Okay, so that was the initial plan with this RFP or bid, public bid, was because these private transportation routes or trips.
Closer to the mic, please.
How's that better?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, sorry. These particular transportation trips or routes that we have, they change because students get moved from schools, kids move into town, out of town. So it's not like the home-to-school buses where we know how many routes we're going to do at the beginning of the year, and we just maybe start out with the one number, and if it changes very little. So the plan was with our public bid was to identify 3 award to 3 vendors, and then as new trips came up, use the quote process to award additional rides or trips using those 3 vendors. When we did the public bid, we were not able to award to 3 vendors because only one of them completely filled out the bid properly. So I needed a different solution, and my solution I'm coming back to you for was to ask if we could, the first piece of it is award the trips in the bid to the one vendor that actually completed the RFP correctly, and then use that vendor and the 3 of the other 4 vendors that we felt were responsible, and I'm not sure what the terms are, responsible and responsive, I guess, or the...
I'd go with responsive.
Responsive, but use 3 of the other 4 vendors, having a total of 4 vendors for any new trips or any significant changes in trips, and quote them out through the towns. They have a procurement ware system that we could, have the vendors send out the quote saying we need a specific ride from A to B for X number of days with certain things, whether it's an aid or, multiple kids or a vehicle or a wheelchair lift, et cetera. Does that help explain what I'm trying to do?
I think it gives me more questions, but.
So
Okay.
if I could further clarify. So in your memo, you talk about Ambassador Wheelchair Services, Connecticut Transportation Solutions, M&J Bus, and National Express.
Correct.
So those are the vendors you're looking for the second part of this item?
Correct.
Okay.
I guess my question is, the Board of Ed doesn't do this? Like, the whole get a quote and all that other stuff, like, we don't normally.
They still come to us for the bid process.
I guess, for that part. Do we have to specify these specific people, or can I just say as designated by the Board of Ed? The vendors.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Can you limit yourselves to those 4 vendors?
That's what we would like to do, yes.
Okay.
So we need one motion to award the bid to these 4 vendors, or to award business.
It needs to be separate.
I believe we need 2. One is to award the public bid 21017, and what is the company?
That's M&J.
M&J, yep.
M&J.
So M&J, however, we also are requesting
That's
then
a
a
bid
bid
waivers.
waiver for
That's the
4,
difference.
including M&J,
I didn't
3 others
notice
plus
that.
M&J, to be able to deal with changes that occur and the need for immediate placement of awarding of a route to handle the needs of a special education student.
Okay. Nope, that's, it's bid waiver. That's the trick that I was not understanding versus seeking additional quotations. I didn't understand why we were doing that.
They're going to be over the 16th. Typically, they will,
Oh, I
one
get why
ride
they
would be
do
over
it.
that, so.
It was just the
Okay,
way it was
sorry.
presented, and I missed this.
And the other thing, again, Dom, you can explain it, the time factor involved on these things. I mean, what kind of lead time do you have know that something's going to need something different?
Well, I mean, we could literally say, someone could come in and say, well, we need to transport this child tomorrow, and that's not always doable. So then we, would have to procure it as soon as we can. So that's obviously the worst case scenario. One of the other things I guess I just would add is we put out the bid for 33 different routes, and only one of the vendors was actually able to do them all. So we're, this shortage of drivers has not gotten any better. It's actually kind of gotten worse. So we need a solution going forward through this year, and then we'll look at the process and see what it would look like for the following year. But if you remember, I came to you, I think it was about a year and a half ago, for a bid waiver because we had one vendor in a contract and they couldn't provide all the routes.
The other question is, on bid waivers, we often put a cap on it, right, don't we? We're not gonna, I know we don't want to, but just following typical procedure.
I don't think we typically do. I think in many of the cases where we do a bid waiver, we have a quote that's specific, and I think the issue in this particular,
Okay.
in this particular instance, the difference is that this is a service that could, well, you're saying it's likely going to go beyond the bid threshold.
Oh, it definitely
Yes,
will.
unless we have to do something at the end of the year, and
Right.
we're gonna transport for a month or so, yes.
He keeps raising his hand.
Okay, Counselor Fishbein.
I would hearken a guess that 95% of the people that are watching this meeting right now have no idea what we're talking about. So, let's start here. The Board of Education wanted to get a vendor for transportation of special needs students, correct?
Correct, typically out of district, special needs students.
And they solicited bids.
Correct.
Which is our normal procedure. And within their bid document, they said, you know, this is what we're looking for, please meet our specifications.
Correct.
And as a result of that, we had a blank form, we sent out, made available, and 4 vendors filled it out, but only 1 did it correctly.
5 filled it out. 1 did it correctly, provided all the information. 2 of them didn't complete all the routes, and 1 of them we didn't feel was an appropriate vendor because they outsourced all the transportation. They were really a coordinator. They were not a provider, service provider.
Okay, so that's information I didn't have. So why did the Board of Education, did it say in the bid document that coordinators are not eligible? Or you just didn't think that the vendor itself had a sufficient level of control over the operations to assure effective completion of the contract?
It said that the drivers had to be employees of the vendor, and there was no outsourcing had to be approved, but that was really more of, you know, on a, it wasn't meant to be the whole trip. And perhaps like there was an issue with a driver and they needed to fill in for a little bit. It wasn't, you know, to outsource the trips all year long.
Okay, so 5 filled out the document, 1 was rejected right off because they couldn't meet the qualifications. 3 of them didn't fill out the entire document, couldn't meet your needs, and you were left with 1. So that's how we get here. Okay.
Correct.
So then the item that's before us is to approve that 1 compliant bidder, but then to say that to the other 3 who didn't do the paperwork right, you're still in the mix, you might be used on a per diem basis, so to speak. Is that fair?
I wouldn't say on a per diem basis. We identified 33 routes or trips. M&J bid them all, so the thought was they would be awarded those trips. But any new trips that come up that we didn't know about, whether it's, you know, we thought this kid, you know, was going to one school and now they're going to a different school, another kid gets outplaced. There's a lot of movement within this, and that's what makes it challenging. You know, where we start at the beginning of the year is very different from where we end. So we need to be able to procure these trips and have what I would, you know, reliable vendors that we're comfortable with.
Okay, and I'm just, the part that I'm having a little difficulty is if the vendor couldn't fill out the paperwork properly, why do we feel that they are reliable to render that service as opposed to offering those other trips to the 1 bidder that was responsible in filling out the paperwork?
I think a couple things. There are certain trips that, you know, that require a lift vehicle. The vendor didn't have a lift vehicle, so they couldn't bid that particular trip. I think that we know some of these vendors. One of them we've been using, so we know they can provide them. They just didn't feel like they could provide every trip we were looking for. They couldn't get up to West Hartford. It just didn't work for them because of where their vehicles were. So that's really, I think, the gist of why we think we can work with them. We bid this out. We only received 5 bids, so we need a bench, if you will.
Okay,
So,
understood.
So just if I can help, if I understand it correctly, Dom, it's not one of the 33, it's additional routes. So you still are going to offer it to M&J. However, it could be a lower price with some of the others who you then would choose for anything over that 33, is that correct?
Correct. Anything we learn about now or anything we didn't list in the bid that has come up, because we may have, we put the bid out 3 weeks ago. There may be new rides that were never in the bid, so we want to say here, use these vendors, say here's what we want to do, and quote it out that way.
Since we're thinking outside the box here a little bit with these other new routes and that kind of stuff, have we contemplated going back to those that had not properly filled out the documents and said, can you correct this stuff, or we just don't allow that?
That's a procedure question I don't think we allow. So if I understand it right, I mean, we did, some of them just didn't fill out all the bids. So without having everybody fill out 33 routes, it was hard we couldn't really even identify who the 3 lowest bidders were, because obviously if you bid 10 routes, you're going to be cheaper than somebody who bid 33 routes.
But when you put the bid package together, there were the 33 routes that you were contemplating, and then you were contemplating these other things that may come up, right?
Correct.
At the very time that you said we need this thing to go out to bid, right?
Correct.
And M&J said we can do the job. But now you're sort of changing the process. You've rejected 3 because they didn't fill out the paperwork properly or whatever.
Correct.
They are ineligible to get the main contract. But then you're saying, although it wasn't in the bid document, we're going to have this other thing that we're now creating that's going to make it available to you, which seems to be changing the process also. How does,
Well, I think the process was to identify 3 vendors, and the 3 vendors would divvy up based on the original 33, and then to be able to quote to those 3 vendors for any new rides. So in reality, we wanted to be with 3 vendors. We're asking to be with 4 now, just because I didn't really see a good way of narrowing it down to 3, because I couldn't compare pricing or what have you. It was always, in my mind, it was always going to be whoever, we're going to divvy up the 33 we know about, and we know we're going to get other routes that we don't know, we don't know what they're going to look like, and we need, we need some options on how to provide the service.
I understand that you need options, and you wanted 3 for flexibility.
Correct.
But you didn't get 3 that filled out the paperwork right. So under the rules, they automatically get rejected. And that's, I'm just trying to get to this other thing that you've created post-bid document.
And maybe the language, the explanation on the backside, I don't know if it's a separate sheet for you or a separate sheet, but it's under number 2. We also seek bid waivers to authorize our seeking of quotations for the cost of transportation services for new and/or substantially modified routes from the following transportation companies. So this does address the issue that they were going to be able to get quotes from 3 who complied. 3 didn't comply. So now they need authority to award 33 routes and then allow for quotations for any route that's new or substantially modified in order to get a fair representation and it would be the lowest responsible bidder, but we may get a better route, and it's not one that we bid. This would be a new or substantially modified route, which would have been the case with getting 3 bidders, because that allowed getting quotations from them, but that bid didn't work.
No, I understand, but that's why we're on a bid waiver. So as we sit here today, do you have any new routes that weren't contemplated in the 33?
I believe we do, yes.
Okay. And would that route and or routes fall within the purview of the contract that would be given to M&J presently? Or was that locked in at the 33 routes?
My understanding was we would lock in at the 33, and anything outside of that would go, if you were to award this bid waiver for the 4, we would quote it through all 4 of those vendors to see who could do it.
Understood, and we've got the school year's about to start, so I got it. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I guess the first half confuses me, and I'm not sure who can answer this question, because if the bid process is done the way it's normally done, we don't get involved. So why does the council have to award public bid 2117?
Well, you're being requested to award that now because it does not follow what was presented to you as a process. The process was to have 3 bidders survive and then be able to get quotes from them on routes that were beyond what was anticipated as part of the bid. That didn't follow suit. So the original approval from the council is not being complied with.
Okay.
So now we're just looking for an award of the single company for the 33 routes, and then still the flexibility to kind of obtain the best quote for any new or substantially modified route.
That is more clearer to me. Thank you.
Then I must have misstated it.
Councilor Tata.
Chairman. So I guess my question is in regards to part 1. Since there's only one bid that was complete, how do we know that the pricing is acceptable? Like, do you know like what your last year's pricing was, and is it in that range?
It is in that range. I mean, it's a little bit, it's a little bit tough to compare because what they can do is they'll combine routes or tier it. So they may take, if we had 33 routes, they may take 2 or 3 routes and give us a price for those 3 combined. But the pricing, it looks reasonable compared to what we're doing. It's hard. It's tough to compare the routes the last couple of years because things have changed significantly in the how many kids we've transported because of the video distance learning, et cetera.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's good enough. I was just making sure it's kind of within reason of what we had in the past, since there's only one complete bid. It's what do we compare it to?
I would just add though that we also, the other bids, we did get numbers on them. So, we could look at them and say, oh, this route was 50,000 here and it was 45 here and get an idea on many of them.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chairman.
All right, take number 47. I move we award public bid at 21-017, occasional transportation for special education students, to M&J Bus Incorporated.
Second.
All right, there's a motion on the table. Discussion on the council. Any questions or comments from the public? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Fishbein,
Yes.
Laffin,
Yes.
Marone,
Yes.
Morgenstein, Shortell,
Yes.
Tata,
Yes.
Testa,
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni.
Yes, the motion passes.
And if somebody wants to fix this, by all means, I move we authorize bid waivers for transportation services for private out-of-district transportation to Ambassador Wheelchair Services Incorporated, Connecticut Transportation Solutions LLC, and National Express LLC.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on the council.
Was M&J supposed to also be included in that one?
I believe so.
Well, they won the first bid. I thought they were done. No, you want them in this bid too?
All
All right, I amend my motion to include M&J Bus Incorporated.
Thank you.
Do you accept the amendment? Didn't you second?
Let me think about it. Yes.
Okay, so it's a friendly amendment. Thank you for the clarification, Councilor Tata. Any further discussion on the council? Questions or comments from the public? There being none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Fishbein,
Yes.
Laffin.
Yes.
Marone.
Yes.
Morgenstein, Shortell,
Yes.
Tata,
Yes.
Testa,
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Barone. That was a little bit grueling, wasn't it?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate you adding me onto the agenda. I appreciate you dealing with this for me. Thank you so
Certainly.
much. Have a great day.
We're glad that the children can start the school year with special transportation. Back to item 10, can we have a motion to go into executive session?
I move we go into executive session pursuant to Section 1-206D of the Connecticut General Statutes with respect to the purchase, sale, and/or leasing of property.
Moved and seconded by Councilor Shortell. All those in favor of going into executive session signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare the council in executive session. Would the public kindly please clear the chambers? Thank you. Call the meeting back to order. Is there a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. There being no further business on the agenda, motion to adjourn is appropriate.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none, I declare the meeting adjourned. Good night.